nutrition, 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 nutrition.
Good morning. My name is Schernick, and I would like to talk to you about NAFSAN, the Nutrition and Food Security Alliance of Namibia, and the role it plays within the Namibian Food and Nutrition Security Coordination System. I'm speaking here in my role as the director of NAFSAN, but I also would like to just share with you that my initial career started as a police detective back in Germany, but I left that career after 6 years because I realized putting people in prison is not just helping them really, it's not helping society as much. So I became a social worker. And the fact that now after about 10 years of social work I'm engaged in the field of nutrition is because there is so much value in and around nutrition for social development of individuals and communities and countries at large. And that's where I like to speak a little bit about where we here in Namibia come from in terms of our coordination systems to improve these systems and the role that NAFSAN as a newborn organization plays in that. So let me start in the beginning just with the understanding of what food and nutrition security entails. And we heard a lot already about maternal and child care, the life cycle. So that really it starts from conception to birth. The first 1,000 days are important in the life of a child. There are developments taking place in these first 1,000 days that we cannot reverse later on. So attending to maternal health, attending to child health is absolutely key for human beings to develop to their full potential. So a lot of aspects are really, when we look at nutrition and food security, around that area of maternal and child care, breastfeeding, enough supplements and caring really for mothers. And as men, as fathers, even though we can't breastfeed, there's a lot of support we can provide in that area as well. A second part is, of course, the food itself, where the food comes from, how it is produced, where it is produced, the variety of food that we can produce as a country at large, but also in our own backyards, in our households and so forth. It's the animals, it's the plants, it's the water-based, land-based, all kinds of food production. And then also what we touched on earlier today, the diet, the intake of that particular food. So that is the green sector. This one, Marjorie touched particularly around issues of sanitation, hygiene, water, and how that influences our capacity to take in food, but also to grow food, to be with food, and to live healthily. So there are a lot of components around that we can do so-called nutrition-sensitive interventions. And the last piece I mentioned, I am a social worker, so I'm very passionate about that particular piece. It's called the social protection. And social protection means, can we create an enabling environment? Can we protect those who are most vulnerable to really have access to food? So it's one thing to produce enough food in a country. But if you look at Namibia as one of the most unequal societies, does everybody has access to that food? And that is why NAFSAN, for instance, is a huge advocate for something like the basic income grant that, without much administrative hassles, provides a basic cash transfer that also World Food Programme spoke about to enable people to make their own choices. And of course, we need to educate people also what these right choices are, but it's really about creating more equality, but also to make sure that the other aspects like these ones, the breastfeeding, can take place, that we have a proper framework in place that where the Ministry of Health says you should exclusively breastfeed for 6 months, but the Ministry of Labour only provides for 3 months maternity leave and only a limited pay. So what do we need to change here that we can create an optimal framework there? And also, if you look at high rates of teenage pregnancies, if you become pregnant as a young girl at the age of 14, can you really provide sufficiently for your child, and so forth. And yes, so this is a bit of, when we talk about food and nutrition security, these are the aspects that are covered in that. So just to give you a bit of a historical background where we come from as a country. So really, right after independence, we moved forward in terms of having a Food Security and Nutrition Council. You notice maybe the difference in wording. It's not food and nutrition security. Back then it was food security and nutrition. So you see the whole field has also evolved to a point where we realize it's not just the food that we need to have secured. It's the nutritious food that we have to have secured. So it's not two individual things, food security and nutrition, but really the idea is to have it food and nutrition security. And the only reason why NAFSAN still has the old way is that it just sounded better, to be honest. But in essence, it's about these components of food and nutrition security. And the Cabinet approved in 1994 the Food and Nutrition Security Council. The council was headed by the Ministry of Health and Social Services, the permanent secretary of the time, which is now the EDs, and the technical committee was chaired by Ministry of, back then, Agriculture, Water and Rural Development. Nowadays, 2021, these are three different ministries, and this was also part of the reasons over time that systems didn't fully work out. There were really some structural changes that took place and other issues that contributed to that council actually becoming dormant, and also the technical committee became inactive. So for a lot of years, nothing really happened, except for the 2000 food guidelines that were developed. But in terms of actual action, nothing much, until around 2009, the Right Honorable Nasa Angula was Prime Minister at the time, and it was a driving force of what was called the Namibian Alliance for Improved Nutrition, with lots of support from GAIN, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, and NAFSAN was established. Cabinet passed a resolution saying NAFSAN should take on the coordination role, but should be established as a non-profit NGO in order to also get more donor funding and other means. So it was very strategically thought through. However, even that great initiative worked for a couple of years very well, but after about 5, 6, 7 years, for a couple of reasons, NAFSAN also became dormant. And the problem is also that as a non-government organization, as an entity outside of government, you cannot coordinate government ministries and play that key role. So that is something that was also recognized at the time. And you can see in 2017, there's a cabinet decision, numbered also from 2017, where the Office of the Prime Minister was tasked to revive that National Food Security and Nutrition Council, and also that NAFSAN, and NAFSAN in that case, I'll show you a graphic in a while, brought other stakeholders together, should play a key role as a technical partner. So what did OPM do? Jump into action and establish an interministerial technical committee where also UN partners and NAFSAN and others were on board. And that committee has worked hard since 2017-18 up to now to really craft Namibia's new food and nutrition security systems. And how does it look like? It has 3 components. The one is a general policy in terms of what guides our decisions and coordination around it, an implementation action plan. How do we now put this policy framework into concrete actions? And there's a lot of ministries, government entities, UN, civil society, academia to play a role in moving that policy into action. And lastly, and most importantly sometimes I feel, is a working coordination structure where we really have also sufficient capacity in that coordination structure on a national level, but also subnational levels. And subnational here means the different regions we have, the 14 different regions. So what happened then to NAFSAN? Back then when this movement was taking place, OPM had this technical committee established. There is a global movement called the Scaling Up Nutrition movement. It has 62 partner countries. And Namibia has been a member since 2011 of the SUN movement, Scaling Up Nutrition. And they supported Synagos, which was a supportive NGO to NAFSAN at the time, to really look into how civil society, academia, and the private sector needs to set themselves up in order to respond to the current development. And this is how NAFSAN transitioned to NAFSAN, which is the Nutrition and Food Security Alliance of Namibia. In October 2019, we had our constituting meeting with over 60 individuals from different organizations present, adopting a draft constitution. Official communication was sent that NAFSAN transitions over to NAFSAN, and we had in March last year our constitution signed, and NAFSAN was officially born. And with support from GIZ, the German government, through a grant agreement, as well as the continued support from the Global Network, which also has a civil society branch, we were able to receive important startup funding, which makes things like this event here possible, but also helped us to really get things moving. And how that exactly looks like and what role we play, I'm trying to show that in a bit of a graphic here. So that is what we had in place from, let's say, 2010 to 2019. We had NAFSAN as the main coordinator, government, private sector, UN global partners, civil society and academic institutions met on a regular basis to look into coordinating the food systems. Yet, as I said, it didn't fully work out, so we oriented ourselves around what other countries are doing that are part of the global network. And there you see a country network, which is government-owned, and then different other networks, civil society, donors, United Nations, private sector, all link up with that network in order to really effectively coordinate. So this is also what happened in Namibia's case, where the coordination structure and the policies speak of Food and Nutrition Security Council that has a practical steering committee with members from different ministries, and that is here based under OPM, the Office of the Prime Minister, but also UN agencies and NAFSAN are part of the steering committee, and it utilizes existing structures that we already have within government in terms of regional levels and community levels. And this is now where NAFSAN comes in. It's primarily an alliance of civil society and academia, but because there is no existing business network in Namibia yet, we are currently temporarily also taking the private sector on board, probably for a year or two, until a private business sector around nutrition has officially formed and established. And of course, there's also space that's a bit experiential in NAFSAN's setup to not just be an umbrella organization for other organizations busy in the field, but to also see how individuals who are very passionate and have a specific expertise in the area can also join as individual members. And UN agencies and others can become institutional supporters, so they won't be voting members, but they will be able to be part and parcel of the organization and the movement. So here you have the different members, and the reason why they are there is because they play certain roles, and one of the key roles is that really they inform NAFSAN on a national level, so NAFSAN can give technical guidance and regular feedback to the Council and the technical committees. Furthermore, NAFSAN's role is to initiate and to support implementation of what we find in the food and nutrition security policy and in the action plan. And there will also be a memorandum of understanding in place between government and NAFSAN, so that that could also be a source of income for the members to implement what they are doing on the ground. And of course, sensitizing and empowering communities. I want to give you an example of work we did with the Shack Dweller Federation of Namibia in a moment. And also one key aspect really is of our work as NAFSAN to facilitate dialogues, engagement like the one we're having now, networking, to advocate. We had workshops already with parliamentarians around the issue of maternity leave and so forth. Even paternity leave was discussed and came up, and also to source additional fundings that government or others are not able to access, and also to assist members in accessing funds. Yes, and one of the first initiatives, Charlotte already mentioned it, was during COVID-19 to really see the crisis as a chance and to bring those old food and nutrition guidelines back into public awareness. So these brochures were translated into 11 other different languages with a particular focus on San languages. And where are we now? In the moment as NAFSAN, we focus a lot still around our own organizational development to really properly set ourselves up, to reach out, to starting the outreach for members. A lot of our time has been going into working with government and UN agencies on those 3 documents that I mentioned, the policy, the action plan, the coordination structure. We had recently joined a validation workshop series with representatives from all 14 regions. So over 2 weeks, we traveled the whole country together with OPM and other ministries. And a practical example of work that we did in communities was together with the Schernick Federation of Namibia, Permaculture Garden and Nutrition Project in urban communities. Picking up from the vulnerabilities that COVID showed us, that we have to import so much food, we really went into gardening in urban communities, but applying organic permaculture principles to it and combining that with nutrition training. Just one thing I want to say here is that this is not actually the work that we as NAFSAN want to do. This is an example of what our members would be doing. This was just that as NAFSAN we had the opportunity to apply for a COVID grant that individual members would not. So in that case we came on board, applied for it, but we are implementing this in very close collaboration with the Schernick Federation of Namibia. And you can see here it focuses intensely on how to set up, even in a small space of informal settlements, gardens that can really reap those kind of fruits. These are actual pictures from the course of the last few weeks and months, and also how to train or inform, educate in a very interactive way community members around why it is so important to really grow their own food. And the project ends in May, June this year. So the idea is, and we're already preparing for a handing over and a scaling up so that the Namibia Housing Action Group that is supporting the Schernick Federation can actually carry this project further and bring it into all the other 13 regions where they have already established grassroots membership. So that is also a practical example of how we as NAFSAN understand our role as an umbrella organization, not to implement projects. That was really just the exception to the rule, but to really see how we can support members in carrying that forward. Questions? Answers?
Maybe we just need to say something about the way forward, that we will be doing later on a membership drive, and that we are working on who can become and what type of members we will have. Still looking towards the future.
Yes. I just touched only a little bit on that, but really we're still fixing a few things in the system internally to really make sure that all systems are go for then to officially welcome members on board and to have a running, smooth running operations. So the members we are looking for are really civil society organizations working in the area of anything nutrition related, community work around health, but also food production, particularly organic food production, healthy food production, NGOs working in social areas, especially around HIV, AIDS, gender-based violence. Those areas are very interconnected, sometimes to nutrition, teenage pregnancies, as I mentioned. So there's a lot of areas, as you could see on the first slide, that are related to nutrition and food security. So from wherever your organization is working on in what of these fields, there may be a link really that you have or haven't seen that connects your work to nutrition and food and security. So these are the type of members we're looking for. It's primarily organizations, whether it's large organizations or smaller organizations. Of course, also the academia. We have already NAFSAN and UNAM as members, but there are also other emerging academic institutions that we would like to welcome on board. The idea is also of the membership fees to really bring you a benefit of being a member, and there should be a sliding scale of membership fees. And in the moment, we also would welcome private sector entities on board, although we have that a little bit in brackets because we really would like to help the birthing of a private sector, a business network around nutrition. Because the way civil society and academia operates is different from how the private sector operates. But for the time being, we would like to be a bit of a developmental supporter for that business network as well. As I said, for individuals, it's also about striking a balance between having individual members and organizations, because if you have 500 individual members and then you have an institution like UNAM or NAST, in terms of the balance, it's really a fine line. No other civil society organization or network in the SUN network in all the other 62 countries is having individuals as members. So we're trying something new here, and we will see how to strike a balance. So maybe for students, you may not join as an individual, but you might join as a student organization and have your voice there, or we create other layers around NAFSAN, so really to make sure people can get involved in the work we do. I think that should be elaboration enough around members, unless there are further questions around members, future members. But just to say it maybe once again, we are not implementers. So our role is really to help connect members, to support them, to give them a voice, to advocate for change, to develop structures that also go down into the regions, to have members that represent NAFSAN in the regions, will be representative on the regional structures of food and nutrition security, and to really have that flow and to support government in their efforts of really improving the nation's nutritional status. Okay.
Nutrition, 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 nutrition.